Good morning, Aloha Friday. I hope everyone had a wonderful week. And today I'm very excited. We have Alex Peach of Colliers, an office broker. We had Alex earlier on in the year in January on the office space situation here in Honolulu, and we're going to get an update today. But our theme today is keeping it simple. I know, with the new Delta variants and with our kids going back to high school, preschool, college, there's a lot of busyness right now. So we're going to keep this presentation very factual, very simple, and our photos today is all about simplicity. But I just we're going to turn this straight over to Alex today, and welcome. Thank you for joining us this morning. I really appreciate it. And Alex, I'm just going to let you talk about your market. And I know you have some slides to share with us, and I'll ask questions and we'll go from there. So here you go. Welcome.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you, Karan. Happy Aloha Friday to you. And thanks for having me back. I think things have definitely changed since I was here in January. You can see, if you can pull up the first slide there.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, as you and I were kind of talking, a couple months ago, I think this talk would have been a little different. Since the beginning of 2021, we definitely started to see things start to pick back up, at least in the office world. Activity, people were coming back. There were being plans made to return to offices. You can see this is just a comparison from our latest Colliers office market report, showing just kind of showing the inventory, the overall vacancy, and you can see from Q2 2020 to Q2 21, we obviously went up and then back down. We actually, we started to see a lot more activity. As I was saying, in the beginning of 2021, there was this net absorption in thousands of square feet to 25,791. That means there was that much more office space leased in Q2 2021 than was actually given back. So that was a net, off the market of that square footage. So we are seeing, people come back. The big thing that is now throwing a wrench in it, as kind of discussed, is the Delta variant and the resurgence of COVID. I think everybody in Hawaii and across the US thought, okay, we're getting vaccines out, people are getting vaccinated, and things are going to start to go back to normal. And this has kind of thrown a wrench in some people's plans. But we are still seeing, I think here in Hawaii, we're definitely more conservative as far as, our COVID measures than on the mainland, but we are still seeing people active in the office market, leasing space. There isn't a lot of growth. We're not seeing a lot of new growth, companies expanding, but people are, still retaining their footprint and evaluating how they plan to move forward. And if you can go to the next slide.
Can I ask you one question here, Alex? When the top of this graph, 20 Q2, which period are we referring to there? Sorry.
So that would be, April, May, and June of 2020. So
I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah, that kind of corresponds with, right when COVID hit, all of a sudden people were giving up space. And then you can see in even Q1 of 2021, even more, 161,000 square feet of space came back onto the market, which is a lot. That's how we get that jump in vacancy.
Oh, wow.
One thing to note, which we'll kind of circle back around later, is across the top, the total inventory. You'll notice that takes a drop of almost 300,000 square feet, and that is because of the redevelopment of 1132 Bishop Street, which I think I brought up last time we were here. Douglas Emmett is converting that from an office use to residential. And I think long term, I'll talk about that more later, but I think we'll probably see more of that, which is part of the reason I think long term, the office market is still going to eventually come back, at least here locally.
What I'm seeing here, though, the overall asking lease rents haven't gone down or anything, really.
No, they have not. And that is honestly, thank you for bringing that up. I meant to touch on that. That is, strictly we're tracking the asking rent, and most landlords have not advertised, that they're offering lower rents. The place where deals are getting done is certainly dropped. Landlords were, especially in the middle of COVID, they're starting to be a little more bullish now, but in the middle of 2020, landlords were doing deals well below what their asking rates were. So you never saw anybody marketing that. Nobody was saying, hey, here, come on in, we'll do $1 a square foot. But
Yes.
There were some pretty shocking deals to be had in the middle of COVID for sure.
And it's funny because there was an incredible deal one of my agents sold this week. It was in a luxury building and it had been on the market since COVID. And, they said no to a few offers, over that period. And I believe the property sold for 15% less than asking, and it was not overpriced. So you sometimes great deals, even though all you hear about in the residential real estate market is how everything's going above asking, multiple offers. Well, one of our agents was able to, her client had a very specific price range, very specific, wanting certain bedrooms. And she was fortunate enough to identify that property and be cheeky enough to put an offer in, and they accepted it, so there are still some good residential buys out there.
Definitely. That's a good story. That's a good one.
Yeah, just found that today. Okay, I'm going on to your second graph now.
Okay, thank you. And this is, I'm going to call this what would be, kind of the bright spot for Hawaii, though I know not everyone would agree. I think the fact that we have gotten tourism back, and, tourism isn't directly correlated to what our office market looks like, but I saw a number of large vacancies come up from businesses that were related to the tourism industry through COVID, that they're just like, we don't need an office anymore. Everything is shut down. We're getting out of here. I think it was Hertz that filed bankruptcy, and, they got out of some of their leases and left some large spaces in town. And things like that. But with this, this is our monthly air passenger arrivals here. And this isn't even with really Asian tourism opened back up, and we're almost back to where we were in March of 2020. So, I know that is a bigger debate here. Is this too many people? Which maybe it is, but at least in the short term, for the people who really need it and the tourism related businesses that we rely on here, this is probably good news. And then we need to probably evaluate how we get higher paying tourists and a slightly lesser tourism count, because I can't imagine when you get Japan back open what it's going to look like. But
that's very interesting, because I've also been told, we have so many tourisms, and I know there's tourism, there's a lot of people complaining there's too many people coming to our islands, but then the hotels they're not booking every room, right? The vacancy rate is still pretty high, but we have all these tourists here. So it's interesting. And no Asian market at, very, very few, of course. So, and I know in residential, we're going, oh, well, people are concerned about buying now because of the prices being so high. But as I let people know is, we don't even have our Asia or Australian market back yet, or New Zealand. Canada, of course, hasn't been around for a while, but I believe Americans can go to Canada now, and probably Canadians will start traveling a little more. But we haven't really experienced all the world being able to come into our community yet.
Yeah, certainly. That's something I didn't even think about. Yeah, if you're looking for residential right now, you're not competing with, people coming, possibly buying, either to move or a second home because they're not here, they can't even look or enter the state. So yeah, when those guys come back, I'm sure that's only going to turn up the heat more.
Will you find that'll happen with the office too? Because I know, of course, they have all those special business visas that people are looking for to start a business and have commercial space.
I think that'll certainly help. That I think a lot of those guys, as far as like the office side, they're taking a fairly small footprint. But I think at this point, every little bit is going to help. We're a pretty small market anyway here in Honolulu for office space. So, every little bit helps. So yeah, when we get those guys coming back, and I think that will definitely help us.
And then I noticed on your graph here, it's 300,000. Is that a significant number? Was that how many passengers used to arrive here? You know, what was the?
No, I think this was actually just pulled from somewhere else, but I think that's just, you know, kind of the high watermark. I honestly don't know if we've, from what I've heard, I don't know if we've ever reached a 300,000 mark for monthly arrivals, but we may have. But I think that just for the purposes of this graph, I think that's where they decided to make the top.
Great. Okay. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, and then we can go on to the next slide, please.
Okay. Oh, wonderful. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, and this is kind of a lot to, you know, kind of take a second to look at it. This is just showing that and this was from a few months ago. So again, COVID Delta variant kind of changed or delayed this, but most companies you can see are still wanting to be, you know, full-time in the office at some point. 43%, you know, the red line is pre-COVID, and the blue line is, you know, post-COVID, 12 to 18 months from now. So, you know, still most companies are going to be in the office, and then mostly in office, you have that you're 58%, and then you go to split, you know, you get up to 60, 70. So fully teleworking, only 15% of companies are planning to fully telework. And I think that I even probably brought this up in January, that I don't know if that's going to, you know, I think that number will even come down once that's actually instituted, just because it might work for now, but I think having no office and no community isn't going to work for people. But the big thing is, I think a lot of companies were looking at Labor Day as the time when there were a number of companies that were saying, after Labor Day, we're coming back to the office. But that has been stalled now with the Delta variant. You know, that's been pushed back and canceled, and everybody's saying, okay, we'll assess. But the big point of this graph is that offices are still going to be around, you know, like, yes, some people are shifting, you know, it's 70% of people pre-COVID were full-time in the office, and that is shrinking. But, you know, they're still going to be split between in the office and telework. And, you know, maybe that leads to a slight reduction in square footage of their space, but there's still a place for offices in this world, is I think the big thing to take away from this.
Well, you know, I know in our company, we really enjoy being in the office, you know, and seeing each other, and the energy and the experience sharing, and, you know, we can bring out issues that we may need help and someone's right there. There's definitely a huge difference being in the office in person than doing everything by Zoom.
Yeah, 100%. You took the words out of my mouth. That's exactly the same in our Colliers office. I mean, you know, we still, you know, as agents, we can come back to the office, and it's kind of been slow to make our way back. But that's the thing I miss the most is, having people to bounce ideas off of, talk about issues, you know, come up with creative solutions. And you don't get the same when you're just working from home and calling someone on the phone or having a, you know, Zoom meeting.
So, you know, I think, you know, with COVID, you know, and I know, you know, if we were talking 2 months ago, we would have just been full force back into the office, of course, you know, without this Delta variant. I think there's a lot of positive procedures now because of, you know, the coronavirus. You know, I think Zoom's quite handy, and I know in the medical field, that's very useful for people not to have to go all the way into a doctor's office and wait in a waiting room. And, you know, there's many businesses like that right now that probably can take advantage of some of these procedures that happen because of the coronavirus, and they'll continue possibly. What do you see? You know, I know you deal with a lot of different businesses out there.
Yeah, I see that it's definitely, I think that, you know, a lot of people still want in-person interactions, but I think we've realized that everything doesn't need to be an in-person meeting. You know, there's talk about people have Zoom fatigue, but that's because if every meeting you have in the course of a day is on Zoom, that will tire you out. But, you know, this can save people, you know, traveling for work. You know, maybe people don't need to fly across the country for a meeting. They can do Zoom. It can save, you know, let's say even here in Hawaii, let's say someone lives on the North Shore, they don't want to have to drive to town to meet with, you know, someone for a consultation. That can cut that down. But the people that do want to meet face to face, the most important meetings where you really want to collaborate, you can still have in person, you know, post COVID. But I think just the flexibility, and I think the time saving of realizing that not everything has to be an in-person meeting where everybody's traveling to one location to sit down around a table. Zoom and Teams, all these things, they do work, and they can be time saving. I think, like I said, I think a lot of people are burnt out on them now, but I think once we are a little more back in person, people will really appreciate how much time it can save if, 50% of your meetings are on Zoom instead of 100% in person.
Absolutely. And I suppose a key question too, Alex, because you're really out there and working diligently in the office market. What kind of businesses do you see looking for office space right now?
Right now, I would say the big one, well, not the big ones, but the most frequent ones, honestly, that I am seeing just all over the place there's still a lot of medical. I think that is coming back. That would, typically people think medical is kind of, foolproof. They're always going to be around. But with COVID and the shutdowns and everything, a lot of doctors and stuff struggled, and a lot of, healthcare systems that weren't making money off the elective surgeries that were all shut down struggled. But medical is starting to come back. So I am seeing a good amount of doctor and medical uses out in the market. Honestly, this isn't a large amount of square footage, but it's a lot of volume. There are a lot of esthetician, health and beauty related services.
Okay.
I'm getting a lot of and that's in smaller markets. So it's not your downtown. They're not going into your large office buildings, but your more suburban markets, Kahala, Waipahu, even Kaimuki, things like that. You're starting to see a lot of them coming out looking for a space to do, their eyebrows, Botox, all of the things like that. And then, I am just seeing your general professional services. You're still seeing accountants, that might be moving or looking for a deal. The state and city and county are always out in the market. They always have some requirement out there. But I would say I haven't seen yet any hospitality related business, coming back and taking a space over that they gave up, or, coming back, to lease space. There were a lot that I know that were given up. I haven't seen any come back to reopen their office if it was given up. It's not to say that it hasn't happened. I just actually haven't seen it myself. So I think we're still a ways out on some of those, hospitality related businesses coming back or looking for space again if they'd given up their office during COVID.
So, if there's listeners out there think, they're at home, they're thinking, I really want to get into an office space again. Are there any hints you can give someone, or professional advice that you can put out there for people right now?
Yeah, certainly. I would say the few things I would tell people, let's say you're leasing your first office, is just make sure you're prepared. Depending on how much history you have with your business, have a business plan. Landlords definitely want to see a business plan. Know that, especially if you just started, let's say last year, know that you've thought out what your plans are. Have your financials ready. Everybody's going to want to see those. Check out, I would say LoopNet is kind of our main go-to for the best place to browse for space. And it doesn't hurt to, reach out to a broker, someone you maybe see on there, someone it's always good to have someone, as you would probably tell people for residential, always good to have someone in your corner that knows the process. But yeah, just make sure you have your ducks in a row before you start looking, because, being prepared and saying, yes, I have, I thought about this. Here's my business plan. If you're a new business, here's my financials. I'm ready. That definitely bodes well for a landlord. And everybody wants to lease space, but also they're a little gun shy. Make sure everybody is still financially viable after COVID. Everybody took a hit then. So
Yes.
Those would be my big tips, is just kind of being prepared for what you're going to need.
Well, thank you. No, I really appreciate that. That was great wisdom to give out there. Thank you for being with us today, and we'll be talking to you in another 6 months.
Yeah, sounds good. And hopefully the Delta variant is gone by then and we have even better news. I would hope so. But thank you for having me, Karan.
Absolutely. And before you go, let me, I'm going to put Marianne's photos on today, and it's all about, as I said, simplicity. And let me just change to the photos here. So, you know, Marianne's always done beautiful photos, and today it was just the spirit of, you know, keeping peaceful. You know, I know we're all going through a lot and exhausted from this whole Delta variant. So enjoy the photos of peace and quiet.
These are great. Yeah.
Yeah,
There's
these
really
are all
something to be said for just like the most, you know, like kind of the most simple things are just really beautiful.
exactly. Well, much aloha. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll look forward to speaking to everyone next week. Aloha, and all the best. Bye.